Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. Good afternoon.
Okay, let me start TEAL 2.0 seminar series number 5. Those who are joining today, let me briefly introduce our seminar series and also our speaker for today. Right. First of all, let me briefly introduce TEAL 2.0 project. This is actually a collaborative project of 11 universities from Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Italy, Norway, and Romania, as well as we have a private company from Bulgaria. And main aim for the project is to improve open and distance learning by providing the facilities, technological solution for resource poor institutions and sharing the expertise which might not available in countries like ours. So at the end of the project, we expected to have a technological solution to deliver and also design online distance learning in science technology sector in higher education. Right. Under that project, okay, so these are the partner institutions. We will also have support and development center. We have established one in Peradeniya to support the maintaining and delivery, also dissemination of the tools developed by this TEAL 2.0. And as a starting point, we started a seminar series, which we talk about topics, various topics on online teaching and learning. So we have done a couple of seminars. So the plan is every month at the last Thursday, usually during this time, we are going to have a seminar. And we were talking about various topics, as you can see, starting from online examinations to our latest one we have conducted on best practices of designing model-based courses. So our topic for today is on everyone should get an A, mastery versus contemporary learning by Professor Roshan Raghal. He's a full professor attached to the University of Peradeniya. So before I give away, let me briefly introduce you. I think most of you already know about his background, but he's a full professor in computer engineering attached to the Department of Computer Engineering. And he also holds a PhD in computer science and also engineering from University of New South Wales, Australia. And he has also over 150 peer-reviewed publications on various topics around computing. And also he's an excellent teacher, a well-recognized person. I hope most of you also had the chance to work with him. So I would like to call Professor Roshan Raghal, so audience for you for the seminar series. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. That's like overwhelming, to say the least. Thank you everyone for the time. And today, I'm bringing a little different topic. The topic is about, anyway, the topic is on learning. And let me share my screen. And Sampath, shall I? Okay, thank you. Right. So the topic for today is everyone should get an A. In fact, this topic is not my own. The topic was originally, or the topic I borrowed from this late physics professor with the name David Mackay, British professor and physicist. So, and I have added things like mastery versus contemporary learning to it. And so today we'll discuss about this topic of everyone should get an A, right? So let's start by doing a very quick activity, very simple one, a poll, where I'm asking this question: what would be your first thought of a class or a course where every student is getting an A? So you see a mark sheet of a class, and you see everyone. So most of you all are teachers, lecturers, professors, so on. So what would you what comes to your mind first? Very first thing that comes to your mind. I'm pushing a poll. I'll give a couple of a minute or two. Be honest to your opinion and open about your opinion. The poll is anonymous, by the way. Uh, 60% answers. I'll wait for a few more seconds. Those who have not responded, please do so. I have about 85% responses, so I'll end the poll. Thank you very much for participating. And the result of the poll I'll share in a little while when I come to that particular point in the presentation. So thank you very much for sharing your opinion. So let me start my talk on this topic by giving some thoughts or the thinking process I had some time back on this aspect. And particularly the thinking process was also fueled by this article that I mentioned by David Mackay on everyone should get an A. Then, so if you just consider, I hope almost all of you will agree, an ideal education system, what we expect to have. Right? So I'm listing some of them here. So in an ideal education system, all graduates, they had to be they are confident and they like to learn, right? So that's the whole idea of education, or any system for that matter. We are providing it for those who like to do so. and they are confident, and those are interested in learning. Not just when you say learning and taking new challenges, we are also talking about deeply engaging, because this is what they want to do, those who are doing it, and therefore it's an engaging process. And also there are a lot of activities happening, a lot of things. So like a vibrant system is supposed to be an ideal education system, and which also improves things like leadership skills, teamwork, and so on. And the students who are or the learners are happy, curious, and self-motivated. And it also, from the teacher's perspective, or the those who are managing the learner's perspective, fun to do this, right? So a teaching exercise is supposed to be, or expected to be, fun on an ideal education system. And because we are talking about a grade, we are talking about the grade, or everyone should get A. So if the graduates are happy, and like if the graduates are getting good grades, one way or the other, we'll try to define what we mean by grades and A's and all that later. But one way or the other, they'll definitely be happy, as you might already know, right? So when you are students, so now you teachers interacting with students, who are the most active and engaging, happy, curious, motivated students you have in the class? Are those who have a self-belief and believe that they are doing their best, and they are being rewarded for what they get, or what they do. So it also shows in various studies, such graduates who have good grades are later becoming good or grateful alumni, and therefore improving or helping the system. There are enough studies proving these facts. So ideal education system is supposed to be like this. And for various reasons, we as educators and education institutions and administrators of education institutions, are we really doing this? Or is this really happening? I hope you know the answer. We would like to believe that it's happening to some extent, but how much, right? So with this question, or the situation and the background, I would like to bring in the reasons for me thinking about it deeply, and coming up with certain actions and plans. And I'm going to share them with you today. So that's the idea of today's session. So on the same line of the background, or to the thinking process. So when like the university system, particularly the universities in Sri Lanka, if you take the state education sector in Sri Lanka in particular, like it's very difficult to get in a student to get into a university. Only about 10% or so of those who are qualified, or 20% or so now, are getting the chance of going to a university. So those who are coming to universities are the best from the schools. So those who are best in schools are coming to their secondary education, and then from there to the universities. They are very challenging, and I don't think you had to I had to explain this to you further than that. And on the same line, those who are entering universities, although the university entrance requirements are minimal, there's anyone who is passing. However, those who are entering universities are on the top of that spectrum, and those who are getting A's entered. And therefore, they are considered successful, enthusiastic, and curious when they come and start or when they want to join universities. You might encounter such students when they come in, when they start. But do you still see them as they progress into the universities? How much of them are retaining their successfulness, or the feeling, the enthusiasm, and the curiosity? Right. So that's one question I would like to pose, and I assume as educators, most of you had similar situations and questions in your mind. And but what happens when they leave? When they leave the university, on average, we are having about 10% of the graduates leaving the university with what we call first class honors, or first class, or a GPA of 3.7, or a like a grade. It's about 10%. average number overall. And then we have about 90% of the students who are getting grades which are below A, obviously. And the numbers change with situation, but in average, you can say about 50% of them are getting Bs, and about a similar number, around 40% are getting below Bs. So it's not just when they graduate or when they leave the university, but also when they are here as the academic sessions or the semesters progress, they see this performance of their performance, and therefore those who are at not getting good grades, particularly those who, because these students have been getting straight A's when they were in schools, and then they enter universities, and then now they see this. So that reflects in their mind, and we also can see that that's happening in university students. So that's those students who are not those who are questioning their self their capacity or the capabilities are those who are who will find difficult to engage with and also to teach and go through this teaching learning process, right? This is one issue, right? So in fact, if you just look at it in surface also, what we are doing here is we are bringing in students who are having straight A's, and then we are sending them out ranked, grouped, and identified only a certain amount of students as having A's. Right? So let's take a step back and think about something else. Things like the excellence, right? So we consider getting A's as excellence, or getting a first class as excellence, right? So being excellent in or excellence itself, so particularly here we are talking about excellence of human being, is it a zero-sum game? Meaning in game theory, or like in general, like so you can also generalize it like zero-sum game, where you have you had to gain, also you had to lose to gain, right? So somebody had to lose for someone else to gain. Is it always the case? Is it the case in education? Excellence in education, is it a zero-sum game? It looks like most of us as teachers and also administrators, we believe so, right? In fact, a recent article, it's not like a Sri Lankan situation, a recent opinion article in New York Times talks about the same issue. Why can't everyone get A's? Excellence is not a zero-sum game. Right? So it's an interesting article and a very short one. I suggest those who are interested read it. And it reflects on most of what our thinking are, and the challenges we have in solving this issue, the issue of everyone getting an A. What are the problems, right? Along the same line, now I would also try to bring the answers I got from you all to the survey question I put, where the question I put is, what would be your first thought of a course where everyone in the class gets an A? Right? I'll share the results. In fact, like I should have just put one of the option, but I gave three options to you also, so those who, you don't have to feel bad about choosing one, right? So that's the whole idea of giving multiple options. So you don't have to feel bad about saying like, okay, so I think the course is bad. But you also can say, okay, I think the course is bad, and also I think the teacher is good, right? So it can be good. Anyway, so these are the numbers I got. And interestingly, half of you, or at least half of those who have responded, believe or think the teacher conducted the class well. And then we have about 40% or more than 40% think the course is too easy. That's why everyone is getting an A. And less number, 1/3, are thinking the evaluation was not done properly. So we are when we say the evaluation is not done properly, it's more like we are finding fault with somebody. So you don't, as a culture, we don't want, even if you want to find fault with someone, we don't want to show it. So that is reflected there in the answer. So in any case, the answer like the course is not good, the standard of the course is not good, is 40% of you are thinking so, right? And the numbers are in fact much higher than this 40% in our circles or in our institutions, right? So recently in one of the evaluation boards we had in Peradeniya, one of the courses had really good grades, similar, right? So about 70% of the students getting A's or 80% getting A's. And then the administrators or all of us together, we decided, okay, looks like there's something wrong with this course. Maybe there's something wrong with the teacher, or maybe there's something wrong, meaning the teacher didn't evaluate properly, right? So that's what we mean by something wrong with the teacher. Or the course seems to be too easy, or the exam maybe is not done properly. These sort of discussions have happened, and then we are going back and looking at what really has happened to the course. So it is not just an isolated incident like that. It's a common occurrence. And again, this New York Times opinion article reflects on the same. In fact, like the article, the author there of the article is talking about what happened the state board exams in New York or some state, I can't exactly remember. And we are in a particular year, 2010 or so, 29 maybe, 2009 maybe, in a year where the performance of a particular exam, like a maths exams, have increased significantly, and then the in charge coming out in media and declaring that there seems to be something wrong. We should do something better. We should increase the standard of the course. We should increase the standard of the evaluation. Right? So this idea is very common, and that seems to be our first thought that's in our mind, like there seems to be something wrong. Not that the teacher had figured out a way to bring everybody's grade to an A. That seems to be the last thing we think of. I'm happy to see at least half of us in this crowd think that the teacher can make, or teacher can conduct the class well so that you get better grades. Right? So that's another reason, right? So the point is, excellence is not really a zero-sum game. I mean, not a zero-sum game, right? So it is possible for everyone to excel, right? So with this, and but let's again take a step back and think about why should, as institutions and teachers of these bigger reputed institutions, have to worry about the grades, right? So what are we really doing there, right? So what are we doing by sorting the graduates we prepare or we teach, and those who are going out of the institutions? What are we doing by sorting them? Are we, why the sorting is useful, right? So what's the deal, right? So are we, obviously it looks like it's useful for others, particularly graduate schools, for example, employers of any other nature, right? So it seems to be useful for them, this sorting business. But what if we can do, we can tell the employers or those who are going to take our graduates that we have a system where we can make all of them good, all of them excellent, right? Not that I'm going to say this person is better than the other person and so on, right? So that New York Times article I mentioned talks about it nicely. I recommend you reading it and reflect on it. And there is also something that I already have highlighted, right? So those who are coming into the universities are with grade A grades, and then when they go out, they don't. What is wrong? Is there something wrong, or do we have to worry about it? Right? And so if you are thinking those who are coming all are like this, the number of students you are getting about 200,000 or less to the state university system particularly, and when they all come in, think about their mindset, think about their attitude, think about the enthusiasm they have, and then on a graduation situation, as these days there are a lot of graduations happening after the pandemic, considering it's possible, and think about their attitude, their mindset. What would they be thinking, and like 4 years earlier, what would their mindset be, right? So I would consider, and also I hope you all agree that we have not done something really good in that sense, right? So what's the reason for all this? why would all this happen, right? So these things I started thinking about it a very long time, but then I started acting upon it somewhere about 5 years ago. And like I said, this is what I'm trying to share today. Um, so the question that I asked is, what's the root cause for this destruction? And I call it a destruction, right? So what's the root cause? So one, we can say it is this mindset of assessment and exams. It's not just about the assessment and exams themselves, but what we expect out of it. What we expect out of these assessment and exams. Like I have already highlighted many a times, and from the survey results also, we think we had to rank people, and also we had to group them. We had to identify them as excellent, okay, pass, bad, not good, and so on. Right. So we seems to be having this the mindset of like putting students into, or our graduates into groups. Right. So what are we really doing by what do we mean by putting them into groups? So this is what we do, right? So if you just take a single course, one course for that matter, a subject, and let's say the graph here shows the time the course is being taught, for the students, the learner learning the course, that time versus amount of material, right? So we expect from each course some learning outcome, and we are talking about outcome-based education and so on, right? So the learning outcome. So how much of the how much command we expect the candidate, the learners to have on a course is going to be, if you assume all the learners start at 0 time and 0 command of material, and then as you can see with time, there can be different type of students, right? Those who are at different levels after a certain amount of time. And this is what we do, right? So what we do is we don't let everyone to learn, everyone to become masters of the material, but we stop them at a certain amount of time. We stop them there, a certain point of time, sorry. And then we have an exam. So obviously if we have an exam here, A is going to perform well, B is going to perform not as A, and C is going to perform not as good as A and B, right? But ideally, what should happen? So ideally in an education system, what is expected is to teach or let everyone to learn. And therefore the command of material of all of them has to reach, or we should let them reach 100%. You might argue, yes, this is not possible maybe. Why not? Because we don't have infinite amount of time, or we don't have a lot of time on our plate to use, and therefore we might not be able to work with the time needed by C, right? But we will do it with the time needed by A. Let others catch up or do whatever they want, and we'll put them in another basket saying they are failures. Right. So this is sort of attitude we are right now having. So is it the only way out? Don't we have any alternatives? Right. So that's what this discussion is about, and the thought process is about. Right. So for the interest of time, I'll not go into every detail of interpretation of what's happening here. So you can, they are sort of intuitive. For instance, what happens to students who are in group A? They'll be the enthusiastic one, the 10% I was talking about, and it will be easy to teach them, and also they'll be engaging in classes, and the classes, the teacher-learner interaction and the class itself will be centered around this A group, right? B group, what will they do? What will they do? They'll try to assimilate like the group A. They'll try their best to do like A. What would they do? They'll find ways to go to A, right? So they'll figure out ways of doing exams or figuring out how the exam questions are, and answering exam question without getting trained to do exams without really mastering and so on, right? So that's all mastering the material and so on. And C group is those who are going to be at the border and thinking, okay, I'm okay with scraping through the system and so on. Right, so this we already know, this sort of grouping are there, and I have put those descriptions here. In interest of time, I'll skip to you. Right. So if there's no exam, so exam is not, seems to be a problem, right? So exam is the one that's like the outcome of the exam that seems to be the problem, right? So what else can we do? So if there's no exam, we can not focus, as you all again would agree with me. Now the students or the learners, what's their focus? Is it learning or is it exams? And me, by experience, I know even if I want students to practice a new learning tool or a new learning method, they'll do it happily if I give them some bonus marks, right? So which add towards their final exam results, right? So marks and exams are the focus, how have become the focus, while learning is not anymore. But if we don't have exams, obviously we can bring back the learning as. However, you might again ask, what do we do for checking? Like for instance, a learner would like to or would want to know whether the learner has mastered the material. So therefore, it's not like completely stopping assessments. You can provide assessments. You can provide feedback through assessment, but not focusing on exams, right? So how you can do that? There are different ways. Self-administered tests you can do, and you can do other activities like portfolio-based assessments, or you can do problem-based learning, project work, various other ways of making sure the candidates or the learners have mastered the material, right? So that's something that we can anyway do, right? So that seems to be a way out. But then we still have this question about, okay, we can take out the exam, fine, but is it going to solve all the problem? Remember, on the previous slide, I was showing you about this time issue. We wanted to anyway stop a particular learning, like let's say if you take a course, you want to finish a course and go to the next course and so on, right? So how do we do this mastery? Okay, bringing mastery level in learning, or how do we make our learners to master the material while keeping within the timeline, right? So I didn't go and change, or I didn't want to go and change how the institution asked me to run semesters, how long they are, how many courses they are going to offer in those, how many credits they are, the workload, and so on. So I didn't want to change those, but keeping them as it is. Can we do something about this? Can we do something about timing? That is what I was trying. And I, in fact, figured out a way of doing it, right? So now coming back to the topic, I mentioned earlier that I'll define what grade A means. So grade A doesn't mean like we are just giving grade A to everybody. Obviously, I think that's obvious and it's clear, straightforward. But what it means is we make sure everyone master the material, right? So we expect or allow everyone to reach to an A, right? Everyone in the class to reach to an A. Right now, the main bottleneck seems to be the time, right? So we don't have enough time to let everyone to reach to it. So what can we do about that? That's where we are. So I mean, I'll just skip that for the interest of time. So I'll jump into what we all can do about this, right? So this is where I stumbled upon this idea of mastery learning. It's not something very new. It's a very old idea, but I came across this somewhere like 5 years ago in various articles, and also this interesting presentation by a famous person named Salman Khan. I hope all of you are familiar with the Khan Academy. And his presentation or the talk is on the idea of mastery and mindset. So I'll let you all listen to his talk for those who have not listened to this talk earlier. The talk is about 10 minutes, and we'll come back and I'll then share how I formulated this particular course, the one I was putting out in my the flyers and places, and how I managed to use these ideas to bring the mastery learning concept into the classes and brought the grades of the students better, closer to it. I'll play the video now.
Today to talk about two ideas that, at least based on my observations at Khan Academy, are kind of the core, the key leverage points for learning. That's the idea of mastery and the idea of mindset. And I saw this in the early days when I was working with my cousins. A lot of them were having trouble with math at first because they had all these gaps accumulated in their learning. And because of that, at some point they got to an algebra class and they might have been a little bit shaky on some of the pre-algebra. And because of that, they thought they didn't have the math gene, or they'd get to a calculus class and they'd be a little bit shaky on the algebra. I saw in the early days when I was uploading up some of those videos on YouTube, and I realized that people who were not my cousins were watching. And you know, at first those comments were just simple thank yous, and I thought that was a pretty big deal. I don't know how much time y'all spend on YouTube. Most of the comments are not thank you. The legend of that. But then the comments got a little bit more intense. You know, student after student saying that they had grown up not liking math. It was getting difficult as they got into more advanced math topics. By the time they got to algebra, they had so many gaps in their knowledge that they just couldn't engage with it. And they thought that they didn't have the math gene. But when they were a little bit older, they took a little bit of agency and they decided to engage. They found resources like Khan Academy, and they were able to fill in those gaps and master those concepts, and that reinforced their mindset that it wasn't fixed, that they actually were capable of learning mathematics. And in a lot of ways, this is how you would master a lot of things in life. It's the way that you would learn a martial art. In a martial art, you would practice the white belt skills as long as necessary. And only when you've mastered it, you would move on to become a yellow belt. It's the way that you would learn a musical instrument. You practice the basic piece over and over again, and only when you've mastered it, you go on to the more advanced one. But what we point out, this is not the way that a traditional academic model is structured, the type of academic model that most of us grew up in. In a traditional academic model, we group students together, usually by age and around middle school age and perceived ability, and we shepherd them all together at the same pace. And what typically happens, let's say we're in a middle school pre-algebra class and the current unit is on exponents. The teacher will give a lecture on exponents, then we'll go home, do some homework. The next morning we'll review the homework, then we'll get another lecture, homework. That'll continue for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we get a test. And on that test, maybe I get a 75%, maybe you get a 90%, maybe you get a 95%. And even though that test has identified gaps in our knowledge, I didn't know 25% of the material. Even the A student, what was the 5% they didn't know? Even though we've identified those gaps, the whole class will then move on to the next subject. Probably a more advanced subject that's going to build on those gaps. It might be logarithms or negative exponents. And that process continues. And you immediately start to realize how strange this is. I didn't know 25% of the more foundational thing, and now I'm being pushed to the more advanced thing. And this will continue for months, and it'll continue for years, all the way to at some point, I might be in an algebra class or a trigonometry class, and I hit a wall. And it's not because algebra is fundamentally difficult or because the student isn't bright. It's because I'm seeing an equation and they're dealing with exponents, and that 30% that I didn't know is showing up. And then I start to disengage. And to appreciate how absurd that is, imagine if we did other things in our life that way. Say home building. So we bring in the contractor, say, told we have 2 weeks to build the foundation, do what you can. So they do what they can. Maybe it rains, maybe some of the supplies don't show up. And 2 weeks later, the inspector comes, looks around, says, okay, the concrete's still wet right over there. That part's not quite up to code. I'll give it an 80%. Say, great, that's a C, let's build the first floor. Same thing. We have 2 weeks, do what you can. Inspector shows up in 2 weeks, it's a 75%. Great, that's a D plus. Second floor, third floor, and all of a sudden while you're building the third floor, that whole structure collapses. And if your reaction to that is the reaction that you typically have in education, or that a lot of folks have in education, You might say, maybe we had a bad contractor, or maybe we needed better inspection or more frequent inspection. What was really broken was the process. We were artificially constraining how long we had to do something, pretty much ensuring a variable outcome. And we took the trouble of inspecting and identifying those gaps, but then we built right on top of it. So the idea of mastery learning is to do the exact opposite. Instead of artificially constraining when and how long, fixing when and how long you work on something, pretty much ensuring that variable outcome, the A, B, C, D, F, do it the other way around. What's variable is when and how long the student actually has to work on something. And what's fixed is that they actually master the material. And it's important to realize that not only will this make the student learn their exponents better, but it'll reinforce the right mindset muscles. It makes them realize that if you got 20% wrong on something, it doesn't mean that you have a C branded in your DNA somehow. It means that you should just keep working on it. You should have grit. You should have perseverance. You should take agency over your learning. Now, a lot of skeptics might say, well, hey, this is all great. Philosophically, this whole idea of mastery-based learning and its connection to mindset, students taking agency over their learning, makes a lot of sense, but it seems impractical. To actually do it with students, it seems like every student would be on their own track. They would have to be personalized. You'd have to have private tutors. You'd have to work worksheets for every student. And there are experiments. These aren't new ideas. There are experiments in Gwinnett, Illinois, 100 years ago, where they did mastery-based learning, and they saw great results, but they said it wouldn't scale because it was logistically difficult. And the teacher had to give different worksheets to every student, give on-demand assessments. But now today, it's no longer impractical. We have the tools to do it. Students need an explanation at their own time and pace. Well, there's on-demand video for that. They need practice. They need feedback. Well, there's adaptive exercises readily available for students. And when that happens, all sorts of neat things happen. One, the students can actually master the concepts, but they're also building their growth mindset. They're building their grit, their perseverance. They're taking agency over their learning. And all sorts of beautiful things can start to happen in the actual classroom. Instead of it being focused on the lecture, students can interact with each other. They can get deeper mastery over the material. They can go into simulation, Socratic dialogue. And to appreciate what we're talking about and kind of the tragedy of lost potential here, I like to give a little bit of a thought experiment. If we were to go 400 years into the past to Western Europe, which even then was one of the more literate parts of the planet, you would see that about 15% of the population knew how to read. And I suspect that if you ask someone who did know how to read, say a member of the clergy, what percentage of the population do you think is even capable of reading? They might say, well, with a great education system, maybe 20 or 30%. But if you fast forward to today, we know that prediction would have been wildly pessimistic, that it's pretty close to 100% of the population is capable of reading. But if I were to ask you a similar question, what percentage of the population do you think is capable of truly mastering calculus or understanding organic chemistry or being able to contribute to cancer research? A lot of y'all might say, well, with a great education system, maybe 20, 30%. But what if that estimate is just based on your own experience in a non-mastery framework, your own experience with yourself or observing your peers, where you're being pushed at this set pace through classes, accumulating all these gaps. Even when you got the A at 95%, what was that 5% that you missed? And it keeps accumulating all the way that you get to a more advanced class, and all of a sudden you hit a wall and say, oh, I'm not meant to be a cancer researcher. I'm not meant to be a physicist. I'm not meant to be a mathematician. And I suspect that actually is the case, but if you were allowed to be operating in a mastery framework, if you were allowed to really take agency over your learning, and when you get something wrong, embrace it, view that failure as a moment of learning, that number of the percent that could really master calculus or understand organic chemistry is actually a lot closer to 100%. And this isn't even just a nice to have. I think it's a social imperative. We're exiting what you could call the industrial age, and we're going into this information revolution. And it's clear that some things are happening. In the industrial age, society was a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid, you had a large pool you needed human labor. In the middle of the pyramid, you had kind of an information processing, a bureaucracy class. And at the top of the pyramid, you had your owners of capital and your entrepreneurs and your creative class. But we know what's happening already as we go into this information revolution. The bottom of that pyramid, automation is going to take over. Even that middle tier, information processing, that's what computers are good at. So as a society, we have a question. All this new productivity is happening because of this technology, but who participates in it? Is it just going to be the very top of the pyramid, in which case, what does everyone else do? How do they operate? Or do we do something that's more aspirational? Do we actually attempt to invert the pyramid, where you have a large creative class, where almost everyone can participate as an entrepreneur, an artist, as a researcher? And I don't think that this is utopian. I really think that this is all based on the idea that we let people tap into their potential by mastering concepts, by being able to exercise agency over their learning, that they can get there. And from a, when you think about it as just a citizen of the world, it's pretty exciting. When you think about the type of equity we can have and the rate at which civilization could even progress. And so I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think it's going to be a pretty exciting time to be alive. Thank you.
That I thought of sharing the video itself, so I don't think I can put it as elegant as how Khan did it there. And so, but then that talk, hope you noticed, is from 2015. That's when I listened to it, and I thought, okay, why not we make use of these ideas to stretch time. So without really stretching time, right? So that's what the problem we had is, right? So we thought it's not practical to extend time and have longer period for those who are slow learners, let's call them that way, to master. Right? So what I did to achieve this sudden jump from, so these are particularly coming from a particular course at the second level 2, second year. The red color bars are showing the class performance when they are coming in on a similar course or a prerequisite course, let's say. And then the blue color bars are the one that are the outcome of or output performance of the same class. So as you can see, one that kept me irritating is over and over again, whatever the different techniques I tried in terms of teaching, without thinking about the concept of mastery learning, I was unable to go beyond a certain level. You can see, like even 2014, 15, 16, I tried so many different techniques within the same framework. But yeah, so as you can see, the incoming performance, although it changed, the outgoing performance didn't do any change as such. Right? So then I realized it looks like there is something in mastery learning, and also there is some, obviously like there is something in mastery learning, and also there is a way out to what or how we see the student performance and like the student time and how they can learn. Right, so that's where I brought in a lot of additional tools, look at other ways. In fact, like Khan himself in that video or the talk, explaining a few ideas, like things like if you want students to learn something, you have on-demand videos, and if you want them to evaluate something, there are things like adaptive exercises. There are tools, even an LMS, a basic LMS like Moodle, not a basic, like an LMS like Moodle has things like assessment ideas, it's adaptive assessment. So it's all possible, and it's just a matter of we getting to deal with such tools and then bringing the students onto those platforms and letting students who are weaker, who need more time, the C class in my graphs earlier, give them a little more time, but not additional time to the semester. But within the time, they are going to spend more time of their own, on their own to achieve it. So that's what, but basically the idea is I just took this concept and stretch it as much as possible to some extent. And in fact, like I was planning on a lot of different other things to do. And then we had, as you can notice, I don't have results after 2018, 19, 20. So in fact, like 19, I didn't teach this course, so I don't have numbers. And 2021, I did teach this course, but both online, I still didn't have the final exams to show the results. And when it comes to online, I applied some extended other techniques as well, but I'll not go into all that today due to the interest of time. But I wanted this idea to be clear. So what did I do? Or how did I do it? Right. So this jump you see here, what sort of activities or plans I brought in, and these ideas are not my own, but collected from various places, starting from the original article that is titled "Everyone Should Get an A," and then ideas like what Khan was contemplating a little while ago. So that's what I basically did. Right. So one of those ideas, this is coming from the article, is this, right? So the idea is you break the time or the material into parts. In fact, we already are doing this. If you take those who are familiar, those who are teachers, most of you are, and you know, we have our courses are outcome based, and then we have intended learning outcomes. A single course have multiple learning outcome, and so on. Right, so we already are dividing our course into parts. So, but then when we are delivering them or when we are conducting this teaching learning process, we don't do it carefully like that. Maybe some of us do, and some of us don't. So the idea here is to divide the course into parts. We call these parts as the parts are going to be about two weeks or so, 2 weeks, 3 weeks parts. And these parts, we are calling them consolidation periods. So each part is a consolidation period. So during this period, we make sure everyone go to a single place. So the gap, as you can see, the gap between A and C was very much high for multiple reasons. One is it's accumulated over a 15-week semester, let's say, or a 14-week semester. And at the same time, the other reason is when they are accumulated, the accumulated effect on a learner like C is going to increase the gap, not reduce. So that there is a gap already between A and C. And then when we keep on accumulating more and more unknown things, it's going to widen, right? So breaking it into smaller parts help. And this gap between A and C is smaller, and we are bridging them. We are finishing. We are having this consolidation session. We are bridging the gaps, and then we go on and so on. So that's one of the main ideas I followed. And by following this idea, I was able to bring even C's learning process faster, right? So C prime here is what I'm showing as C's new learning curve compared to C, which would have been the learning curve if I just go with the usual speed, like if I do it like how A is doing there, right? So and instead of that, if I break it into parts, and each part I consolidate and make sure C comes back, C comes back, C comes back. And then the C can, like this gap I'm talking about, can be reduced, right? So how that's one of the things I did. And how I did it is by using these consultation sessions as some as much as possible interactive engaging sessions. I'll talk about that next, what exactly I did. But the concept is this. How I practiced, I'll discuss that in a little while. So this idea, I hope, is clear here. So what sort of things I amended to the traditional system to bring back or utilize these ideas? One, these consultation sessions or consultation period, consultation period. So you have these periods, and at the end of the period, you have a session where you make sure all are on the same at the same place, so we can go forward. So that's the session. So in a course like this, I had about 6 or 7 consultation sessions, and it happens after each consultation period. And how will each one of these consultation period look like? Inside the period, we want to let the learners take in charge and spend their own time. Depends on how good and how fast you are and so on. You can spend different amount of time. By the way, there's something else that I skipped earlier in one of those slides is when these learners come in to learn a particular material or a particular expected learning outcomes, a series of learning outcomes, the learners might not also be all of them be at level 0. They all not at 0. They'll all already be at different levels. So the starting point itself is not 0. That also is another adding fact to make this gap to end up with these gaps at the end. Right? So that's another aspect. So what did I do to each one of these consolidation period? I do what we call this flip learning one idea. So in flip learning, it's again a well-known concept under blended learning. So we basically, like Khan was highlighting, we use tools and technologies. Right. So in flip learning, what I did is I went and looked at various aspects of how we can do it. And in fact, it's sort of a need-based exploration. What I did, I was in fact even the previous years in the graph I was showing 2012, 11, even before. I was using a sort of a flip learning. I mean, I hope you all understand this idea of flip learning, right? So it's more like even school teachers we do, right? I mean, teachers did or do. They ask, okay, you have a textbook or a book, and you ask the teachers ask you to read a chapter and come so that we can discuss. I had a very good set of tutorials on this particular course that I'm talking about. And for the last several years, about 10 years plus, I'm giving the tutorial to the students early and ask them to prepare and come. And then in the class, I do sort of a discussion. This is what I was doing all the time. But what I realized was I was only engaging with this A group students who really read and come and they get grades and they improve and they are more motivated, enthusiastic, and so on. Others, it's a common occurrence everywhere, right? So others, they don't read, they don't even worry about reading and so on. So with tools, I was in fact looking for a tool to solve this problem, the problem of me knowing or me verifying whether the students can have read what I assign them to read, and whether we can motivate them for this reading, and whether we can keep track of them for this reading and so on. So I came across this professor and then his set of ideas and tools regarding flip learning. And the tool is called Perusal. So I started using the tool Perusal in the same year where I was showing you the graph. Perusal I used, and plus I use Perusal is a tool. It's a social, now they call it a social reading learning tool. I think actually Perusal has for those who are not familiar, it has a way of teachers uploading. Now you can upload text, videos, audio, and then the learners can go through them offline, flipped at their own pace, and then they learn those methods. And also they can discuss with each other, and the system keeps track of how much engagement the learners had with the system. So that's the tool I introduced. And with the tool, I also brought in a few other ideas again from Eric Masur, an educator from Harvard, and he is the one who actually founded or co-founded this tool called Perusal, and also this concept called peer instruction. So peer instruction matched my requirement very nicely, right? So it matched my requirement very nicely, meaning what the peer instruction, how Eric Masur, you should go and listen to his videos, lectures or sessions. His proposal is you use a tool like Perusal, where you can do flip learning. So meaning like you let the learners to learn there. In fact, like maybe I can just quickly show you a screen of the tool Perusal we use. I hope you can see my new screen. I see there's a question. I'll answer that in a little while. So this is just the tool of a particular class. The screen, I hope you can see my screen. And what you see here are like different lessons. So each one of these is a lesson. And there are video lessons, text lessons, and so on. And you are not seeing the lesson as it is because you have to go inside to see it. But this is the teacher's dashboard where you see. So for instance, if you take a lesson like a topic like this, you can see the students have read, and on average, how much time. So there are about 60 students or 70 students in this class. On average, how much time they spend on this. So on average, they spend 3 hours reading this particular material, or this is, it's reading material. And they all together have put 343 comments, and they have put 161 questions, and there are questions which are not answered. And this tool also has features. I can go to individual student and see how they are performing, whether how much their timing is compared to the average time, how much time, and so on. In addition, I also can see the upvoted comments and the active students, and I also can see the what we call a confusion report, which basically lists down the more active type of areas in the reading exercise or a listening exercise or a watching exercise. Right, so those details, it's taking a little time to load, but so you can see all these details for each learning activity or an activity I give. So I gave these activities for the to start, and then what we do is we use this confusion matrix and this upvoted questions. I take them from there and go to the class with those, and those questions are going to be discussed in the class and discuss in the sense they are pure discussions. So I put up, say, a discussion session goes like this. I put up a question, so I let the students to answer it. I use a tool. When it was physical classes, I used like a mobile app through which they can answer. And then now online classes, I can just use something like Zoom poll or something else to answer, for them to answer. So they answer the question, and then I see like if they have learned, because I'm sort of forcing them to learn now, because I can keep track of whether they are reading, whether they are watching, and so on. So usually about 70–80% of them get the question right. Those who don't get the question right, we are going to engage them with others, peers, so peer engagement, to make sure they all come to consensus, and meaning they all learn from each other. So that's the idea I followed within the like this discussion sessions and the consultation session. Consultation period, and towards the end of the consultation period at the session, I have ways of evaluating, having lab sessions and various other activities to evaluate and make sure that or they can self-evaluate to make sure they are on the same page before we go to the next part. So that's one of the things we did, like with the concept of flipped learning, tools like Perusal, tools like a polling tool, and some small innovative ideas encouraging them to get activated and work. That's one. And the other one is, like I already said, the consultation sessions. So these sessions allow them to, for a smaller period of time, make sure they learn. And obviously the students themselves should know not everybody will take the same amount of time to master a certain material. Multiple reasons. One, they might not be as fast as somebody else in learning. And the other one is when all of them are coming into a course, they all are not at the same level. They all are not at the same level related to this particular course material. Because, like, say, the course material might have some, let's say it's a course on, let's say, programming, for instance, because I'm teaching such courses, I'm just taking an example. There might be some students who have already done some similar courses. So the idea, so the tools we are going to use might be familiar to some people and not for some others, and so on. So the students realizing some have to spend more time than the other, some had to get more help than the other, and providing that within the semester timeline is what played the trick. And that's basically what I did. And using these, so in fact, like at the beginning of each one of these classes, each one of these course sessions, I go and do this sort of similar presentation to student, a little different, more towards student side. But I do a similar presentation where I request them and I tell them, this is what you are planning on doing. This is what is expected from you. It's not like a traditional class. You can't all expect to do the same amount of work to have the same outcome. And if you all want to get to an A, this is what is expected from you. And so in fact, like this slide is just a copy of what I show it to students. So I just wanted to show it to you all as well. So I request the students to attend the classes and actively participate in the discussions. And also I encourage them to ask questions. Obviously, they, like, as you can see, even for a single learning activity, they are about 70 students and 300 plus comments, right? So about 5 comments per session. So I have about 20 of one per week, sort of 15, around 15 different activities like that in the reading or the watching activity, the offline activity. And then we bring that into the class and we let them discuss. I also realized that they discuss very openly and freely. when they discuss things with each other and they argue, and then they come to me, like I'm in the class, and they come to me and also ask and verify and validate and so on. Right, so all this happens. And I request them to use the consultation session efficiently. This is the request I'm making the students. And also I'm asking them to make do more examples. I in fact provide a lot more additional exercises for those who feel like they want more, and so on. So this is what I tell them. Finally, by exploiting all available resources, obtaining an A is what I request or expect from them. And also I put this disclaimer saying it's obvious that we are not just giving an A. Please note that we are not trying to give you a better grade or give you better grades without you earning them. The whole exercise is to make you earn better grades. Right. So that's what I have done. And by doing so, I was able to improve. Obviously, I have a lot more things to do. I have a lot more plans and getting things better. But I thought of sharing my experience so that it will be useful for others. So for the reading, one is the article. Most of what I presented is coming from this article. Actually, everyone should get an A. And then the opinion article from New York Times on this excellence is not a zero-sum game. I suggest you all read that. Okay, so that's all I have, and let me take the question. There's one, and rather, how do you ensure as long-term grasping of the fundamentals core subject knowledge versus testing the short-term memory when doing shorter semesters? So I am not very sure that whether the question is, and rather if you are there, you can turn on the mic. Whether the question is about our 15-week short semester or my consultation sessions.
No, I joined late. Sorry about that. But my question is basically when you shorten the semesters in general and try to test a specific area of study, how do you make sure at the end of the four-year or a 3-year course that the students have the right long-term memory or long-term knowledge on the core fundamental aspects, whereas in shorter semesters I see that they more or less get through the semester because of they have a small area to cover, but by the end of the fourth they might forget some of the things. So that's
an excellent question actually. I mean, in fact, the movement towards this like mastery learning is also similar. So we don't want students to focus on getting grades by passing exams for each semester and then forgetting and moving on. So from an academic program design perspective, we are also looking at various other aspects and that are possible as well. Say, for instance, how we can reinforce what is done in one course in another semester and so on. So that's how the courses are anyway designed. Like a program is designed with the continuous progression in mind and various ways of evaluating them vertically and also horizontally. So within the semester itself, we have ideas like you have things like capstone or unified projects. There are students work on a single project with multiple courses horizontally. So within a semester, so they don't just see these courses as isolated courses, but they are together, and they see the connection between them. And also we do this vertically as well, so between different semesters. So that's the way forward. But here what I'm like, so this is part of that bigger picture. What I'm presenting here is making sure the students don't just look at the semester course as a course where they can just do it and like somehow get a good grade or pass and go, right? But make sure that they learn, and understand. So the learning is a very like a loose definition there, but making sure that they understand how this is applicable, how it is useful in a big picture, and so on. So those things are also happening, but this is just one aspect of the whole thing. Thank you, Anuradha, for the question. Any other questions, comments, your experience? Please feel free to share. I'm happy to discuss them.
Roshan, one more question. Like, is there any possibility extend this to the Sri Lankan school education system?
We should definitely do. In fact, like there are a lot of, at least I hope we should first, I mean, this particular exercise, what I'm trying is to make sure this is done at least at the universities first. And then definitely, yes, we should do, I think that the school has in my opinion, the school has more engagement than universities, and I hope you all will agree. Because of the trust that teachers have built with students and the engagement they have. Universities, it's less. So this is about that and bringing that engagement back. But in schools, yes. So the idea of mastery learning, things like what Khan is talking about in the video I shared, it's actually school education generally. So again, there we should. It looks like I mean, just to summarize what I said, right? So just to summarize, it looks like it's straightforward now to use tools and technologies to compensate what's happening in classes, right? So that's the summary, right? So we should make sure we should train the teachers in schools to do the same as well. Yes. And there's one other comment. It's impressive that you have achieved this method. Seems to be require students to be motivated. So, okay, the comment is it's impressive what you have achieved with this method. This still seems to require students to be motivated. How does this teaching method impact the student motivation? Okay, so the student motivation is okay. But one, why would they be motivated? Obviously, because they are getting an A, right? So that's the starting point, right? So they have a good motivation there, right? So, but then why are they getting an A, and how all this is? Why answer? I mean, I can just go and tell them, you follow all this, you sort of will get an A. They are reasonably motivated. And but the whole idea of mastery learning and why it is useful, I want them to know this, right? I want them to understand these ideas. Not just the teachers, but also the students, so that they become self-learners and they know that there are enough resources out there. And I see like those who are going through courses like this, they are motivated, like they understand, those who understand this idea, they are motivated. And to give you like small points on motivation, we have, say for instance, I don't have recordings of my sessions. But if you go and look at Eric Masu's videos, he has recordings of his sessions where how the students interact with each other, even in a physical class. How the peer learning happens is just to give you how motivated the students are in a class. So you know, like we have given them some pre reading, let's say, and they have they have gone through the reading. They have put some questions, comments, and the teacher, looking at the essence of the discussion in the offline or like on the on a tool, comes up with a certain amount of topics or questions and come to a class. And a class, let's say we had 50 students, and what the teacher is going to do is the teacher is going to flash the first question and ask all 50 students to individually answer the question. The students answer the question, and then we ask, let's say a group of 3 students. So we divide the 50 students into 3. We ask the 3 students to talk to each other and see what each one has given as the answer. And if your answer is different from the other one's answer, then you discuss and figure out why it is so. A class like that is super active. You have to listen, like see one of those classes, like they are talking, shouting, fighting. That's how it goes within the class. And then they come to consensus. So the whole idea is at the end of the small discussion, they had to come into consensus, and all 3 had to have a single answer for that particular question. And then they answer again. I have enough evidence to show, in fact, like I didn't start it new. Like I said, I'm attributing it to Eric Masu. So he has shown, even there are papers are written about it. He has shown that by doing this, if you have about 70% or above, in the first go, if the students know about 70% of the students know the right answer or the right material, then at the end of that discussion, all 100% knows. So I have seen it myself. I have classes where about 70% of them, 70% of them getting the answers correct. And then I let them discuss, and then once again I ask them to give the answer again, second time. So they will not like, I'm not displaying the answers to the whole class at once. First time I just take the answers privately, but those 3 small groups, 3 other small groups, they will discuss, and then they'll give the second answer. The second time when they give answer, almost all the time, there are exceptions, but almost all the time, all 100% get the answer right. Right, so that's like amazing to see. Like, by the way, like by that time I would have not done anything in terms of transferring of knowledge and all sort of this traditional thinking, right? But then it has happened. They are learned, and they are learned better, in my opinion, right? So that's how it works. As one other comment. So there's a comment about the slides. Yes, I'll share the slides with all of you. I have all the email addresses. I'll ask the organizers to send the slides across. Any other comments, questions?
Roshan, Anuradha again.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you about the honest feeling with regard to getting this peer learning thing done. How easy or how difficult that was? When that, like, if you take the Sri Lankan education system again, like if you go to Montessori's, etc., we have, of course, group work. The moment you enter the primary and secondary education system, it's more like teacher-student type of communication where we have less group work. And by the time you get to the university, that is the sort of mold that they come in with. And how easy or difficult it is to get motivated to work in a group and share things and learn this peer learning system.
Andrew, yeah, it's again an interesting question, but then it has two parts, right? For instance, average students in a university, you work there, right? So where do they learn? From peers or from teachers?
Yes, mostly from peers.
Yeah. So it's happening unofficially. I mean, starting from small group classes to this big towards the exam, what you call copy classes. That's how it's happening, right? So peer learning is already happening. That's my take, right? So the only thing is I am leveraging on it. Right? So what I'm saying is let's leverage on it and like make it formal, make it official, right? So make it part of the learning, right? So I need that's the short answer. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, then so looks like we are closing. Sampath.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akal, for your interesting, talk on how everyone should get an A. And on behalf of the TEAL2 team, as well as the audience, I would like to, thank you for spending your valuable time on contributing towards education, as well as like sharing your thoughts, experience with us. And I also have some announcements for the audience. So we will also have another seminar comes in as our seminar number 16. So this is conducted by Dr. Subodha Gunawardena on February 24 from the same time. So I hope you can also pass the message to your colleagues if they are interested, and also like spend time on providing feedback for our seminar series. At the same time, if any one of you are interested in sharing your experience of any of these topics, which is relevant for sharing your teaching and learning experiences, please do contact us. We would like to have you on board. Thank you very much and nice day. We'll hope to see you in next seminar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank